Now, you mentioned in the past that listening to the Rapper's Delight for the first time, which was came out, I believe, in '79, but I think you mentioned hearing it in 1980.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
What grade were you in? And take me back to that time.
So I'm like probably a senior in high school at Venice High, and there was a couple. I remember hearing "Rocket" by Herbie Hancock on like La Brea and Coliseum, and I remember hearing "Rapper's Delight" in front of Venice High. Like I remember where I was, right? You know what I mean? And so the songs just really blew me away because I had never heard anything like that. I mean, I was a fan of funk music, right? So like Chic, Good Times, this is an instrumental that it's a great funk song, but all of a sudden there's this guy rapping on top of it. That's, and as crazy as it sounds, a Rapper's Delight being now viewed as kind of like one of the most simple or rudimentary raps, it was like mind-blowing, to hear them and being from LA, people in New York had maybe heard other rap. There was more rap records out and things like that. Maybe we heard people rapping on the streets and things like that. We didn't really have that. LA really discovered rap through breakdancing, more or less, and the success of Rapper's Delight. This kind of took hip hop in a big, national and global thing, and other regions besides New York started to discover it, But yeah, it was just like, hearing that music just really excited me, and especially Rocket too, because it had the scratching and the DJ stuff in it. And so it was kind of like, that was so unique and new. There was no music that had like that had turntables as instruments, and scratching was this new thing. And it was just like, I mean, we couldn't get enough of it. Like every hip hop song had a lot of scratching in it back then, because it was just so cool and new, and everybody loved it, And so, yeah, it was a little small thing that most people didn't know about. So when you knew about it, you're kind of part of this club that's a small club. Hard to imagine now, but you know what I mean? The majority of even black people weren't even into it or up on it, let alone people of other races, which was almost non-existent at first. I mean, there were always small pockets of white people and definitely Latinos and everything that were both fans and in smaller senses somewhat contributors, especially for the white people, to the culture. But, this is a black art form, I would argue that from a black Caribbean art form, starts in Jamaica, comes to the States, and morphs into hip hop.
I would argue black Jamaican Puerto Rican movement.
Yeah, sure.
From the Bronx.
Yeah.
You mentioned Rocket, which is by Herbie Hancock.
Right.
And I used to love listening to that too, but I used to watch him in the videos, and I used to say, this dude is not really hip hop to me, but he's got scratching, he's got really interesting tracks. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but how did he merge what we would call like this hip hop flavor in his sort of jazzy style?
Well, he brought in the guy Grand Mixer D Street. He brought in a DJ that was really talented at the time, and then he made this track, and then he collaborated with people that were doing the art, and he was more musical. So, as an incredible jazz musician that he is. So the fusion, the collaboration ended up being this great song. And it was super progressive. I mean, like, Herbie Hancock was this jazz artist, and you think, oh, he's making a hip hop record. But at the time, the track was so funky. I mean, you couldn't do a party and not play that. That was like the highlight of the night. And, it was a very incredible progressive track. And yeah, I mean, I think, that just shows, there were a lot of guys like Quincy Jones and people that embraced hip hop from the very beginning. And some of these collaborations, like the thing with a guy like Herbie Hancock, who's a super talented musician, and he brings in and collaborates with talented hip hop guys, and then you have this kind of a hybrid almost kind of thing, and it's amazing,
Yeah, definitely. Now,
still funky to this day. Kids, go look it up. Herbie Hancock Rocket, if you haven't heard it, watch the video.
You don't really hear a lot of people mentioning Herbie Hancock when you talk about like hip hop history.
Right.
His name rarely comes up, but
right.
You just reminded me, like, yeah, I used to listen to Herbie Hancock too.
Well, he had that one song, and also he had songs like Headhunters and songs that were sampled like a lot. You know what I mean? So he had other songs that were sampled by, when the kind of like whole like 90s. Loop era came real big. He was one of the guys the Digger in the Crates would use to sample. So he had a whole hip hop influence a little bit later in that way. But he didn't personally make any other hip hop records, really, I don't think. So yeah, it's kind of understood. He's not talked about that much. But for me personally, that was a huge record that influenced me being on the West Coast. And these are like the first records that are breaking through commercially that are getting played on radio and things like that, This was before K-Day, and so, you know.
Yeah, if you was listening to hip hop in 82, 83,
Yeah.
84, there's no way you didn't hear Herbie Hancock.
Right.
You just mentioned K-Day. K-Day, I had Greg Mack on Street TV the other day. He came to LA in 1983 to work for K-Day.
Right.
What do you remember about K-Day? Because this was also like a cutting edge radio station.
Sure.
And this is right when you're kind of making a name for yourself.
Sure. Well, not as much as I should, because I moved to I was in the Bay Area. I would come home for summers and we would listen to it.
So you listening to KMEL?
Yeah. Listen to KMEL and The Quiet Storm when you got a girl over. Yeah. But you know, K-Day was a big influence on me, of course, when I moved back to LA, like around '87, you know, and all that. And I worked with them. I got to DJ on the show, on the air before they closed. Greg Mack brought me on like twice, you know, and yeah, I mean, it was just a huge influence on everything, you know. I mean, we had a 24-hour rap station before New York did, which is crazy because New York was so ahead of us, you know, where we weren't even making records, you know, for years until they were. And then even when we started, you know, we didn't, long time before we caught up to them. Especially like out there, they didn't listen to our music until like NWA and Ice Cube. They didn't. Yeah.
New York rarely listen to LA stuff. But
Right.
It's interesting. If you were in New York City, and I was there during this time too, you would have to wait till the weekends to listen to hip hop. Friday nights, Saturday nights,
Right.
WBLS,
Right.
98.7 KISS. But in LA, Greg Mack could throw a rap song on at any time of the day. It
Yeah.
didn't matter.
Thanks for watching StreetTV.net. If you're not subscribed, please hit that button below and click the bell to receive alerts and notifications. Feel free to comment below so you can give us your feedback, and be sure to watch the 2 related episodes to the right. If you want to support this platform or follow us on social media, visit the links in the description. And thanks for watching StreetTV.net.